All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving headfirst into the mystery that is Cafetu, the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, yeah. The Philadelphia experiment.
I've got this YouTube video someone sent over, and
Oh, yeah.
it's an interview
Okay.
with a hypnotist and their subject.
All right.
And this subject claims to have the inside scoop
Okay.
about this whole legendary event.
I love it.
Now, of course, we're approaching this with, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
But there are some details in here that are just too juicy to ignore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Philadelphia experiment, that's one of those things that just captures the imagination, doesn't it? It blends that science fiction with a potential real historical mystery.
Totally. And this source we had today is bringing some pretty unique ideas to the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, most people, when they hear Philadelphia experiment, they jump straight to teleportation.
Right. Invisible ships teleporting around.
Right. But this interview throws a curveball. The subject says it wasn't actually about teleporting a ship at all. It was about messing with time itself.
Ah, that's interesting. That's one of the things that makes this source so interesting. What does that even mean? Manipulating time. What does that even mean in this context?
Right.
The subject talks about, like, defragmenting matter.
Defragmenting matter.
Yeah. Like creating a bubble where time doesn't exist.
Hold on. Defragmenting matter. That sounds more like, something you do to your computer, not real life. Do they even attempt to explain how that's supposed to work?
Not really. And that's where the healthy skepticism comes in, right? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they somehow found a way to alter the way that matter interacts with time, at a really fundamental level. That just throws everything we think we know about physics right out the window.
Oh, yeah. You're telling me this is time travel we're talking about here, not just disappearing for a bit. It makes you wonder if they were even drawing on any real scientific concepts or if this is just, straight from someone's imagination.
Well, I mean, there are some theoretical physics concepts like, time dilation, where time passes at different rates depending on the speed and gravity. But those are based on, Einstein's theories of relativity. And even those don't suggest anything close to defragmenting matter.
Okay, so maybe defragmenting isn't the right word, but this idea of a time bubble. Is there anything in science that even remotely resembles that concept?
It's definitely a stretch. The closest thing I could think of is maybe the idea of a warp bubble, which is a theoretical concept in general relativity. But that would be warping space-time to allow, faster than light travel, not necessarily time travel.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right, so the science here is shaky at best, but let's get back to the interview itself.
Yeah.
Where does this time manipulation idea even come from?
The source claims that the U.S. Navy was drawing on, get this, ancient texts.
Ancient texts?
To figure out how to do this.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, these texts held knowledge about how to manipulate time, and the Navy was trying to decipher and replicate it.
Ancient texts holding the key to advanced technology.
Yeah.
Sounds like something straight out of Indiana Jones. Isn't that a pretty common trope in these conspiracy theories?
Absolutely. Yeah, this idea of hidden history or lost ancient wisdom, it pops up a lot. But applying it to the Philadelphia experiment, and specifically to time manipulation, it adds this whole new layer of intrigue.
And of course, no conspiracy theory is complete without, just a dash of extraterrestrial involvement, right?
Right on cue. Yeah, the subject brings up aliens. It's hinted that either a secret branch of the government is working with extraterrestrials, or maybe these beings are actually trying to slow down these experiments, maybe to prevent humans from getting, too powerful.
So we've got time manipulation, ancient texts, A&D aliens, all wrapped up in one neat little package. It's like someone raided the conspiracy theory pantry and just threw everything in a blender.
Yeah, exactly.
But amidst all this wild speculation, the interview also touches on something pretty dark, the human cost of this supposed experiment.
Yeah, that's right. The interviewee talks about people involved being given injections, maybe to help them handle the stress of time travel. But there were these horrific side effects, hair loss, aging too fast, and long-term health problems. They paint a pretty grim picture of what these people went through.
And they even mention this strange gooey substance, maybe even some kind of life form that they use to try and help the subjects adapt.
They actually tested it on animals first, according to the interview.
Wow.
Which, if you can even begin to accept the idea of, this whole experiment raises some huge ethical questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we're talking about potentially subjecting people to incredibly dangerous and unpredictable procedures without their full knowledge or consent.
It's pretty disturbing to think about. And it's not just happening at one location, right? The interview suggests that there might be more of these projects going on, places like the Arizona desert or even Antarctica.
That's what the source implies, yeah.
Yeah.
And if we think about the bigger picture, that suggests this could be a huge coordinated effort, possibly happening all over the world. Secret research facilities, operating in the shadows, experimenting with technologies that could have these mind-blowing consequences for humanity.
So we're not just talking about one ship disappearing and reappearing. We're talking about, like, a potential global network of top-secret experiments.
Potentially. Yeah.
But why?
Yeah.
What's the point of all this secrecy and this risk?
The interview hints that it's all about preparation for some major event.
Okay.
The subject mentions a countdown, a sense of urgency surrounding this whole project.
What kind of event?
Yeah.
An alien invasion,
Yeah.
some kind of global catastrophe.
It's left open to interpretation, but the possibilities mentioned include, an extraterrestrial conflict or even a reset of the timeline itself.
Hold on. A reset of the timeline. You mean like someone hit the rewind button on history?
That's where we're heading. Yeah.
Now things are getting really interesting.
And with that in mind, I think maybe we should take a closer look at some of the specific claims made in this interview and see if we can separate fact from fiction.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
So you were asking about this whole resetting the timeline idea.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that the subject doesn't just, mention this out of the blue.
Right.
They keep coming back to this idea of a countdown, this feeling of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were racing against time to prepare for something huge.
Like they were trying to, fix some mistake in history.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe avert some kind of disaster. But wouldn't changing the past, create all sorts of paradoxes? I mean, how does the source even address that?
That's a great question. And honestly, the source doesn't really offer a satisfying answer.
Okay.
It just kind of throws out these big dramatic ideas without getting into the specifics of, how it would all work.
Yeah. Maybe that's part of the appeal of these kinds of stories.
Right.
The ambiguity. It just kind of leaves room for our imaginations to run wild.
Yeah.
But let's try to ground this a little bit. They mention specific equipment used in the experiment, right?
Yeah, they do.
Did any of that sound plausible?
They talk about a special type of cabling and a parabolic dish.
The parabolic dish.
That was supposedly used to create this time bubble.
Like the kind used for satellite communication and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like they were trying to focus or direct some kind of temporal energy.
Right.
Which, again, doesn't really have any basis in science as we understand it.
But it makes for a cool visual, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You can almost picture this giant dish humming with energy, distorting the space-time continuum around this ship.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ship, did they mention anything about what happened to the crew during the experiment?
The interview subject describes feeling incredibly disoriented.
Okay.
Like their body was being pulled in multiple directions at once.
Oh, wow.
They also mentioned seeing things that didn't make sense.
Okay.
Flashes of light, strange creatures, even glimpses of other times and places.
That's pretty intense. It sounds like their perception of reality was, completely shattered.
Yeah, it was.
Did they say how long this whole experience lasted?
The timeline's a bit murky, but it seems like the entire event from disappearing to reappearing lasted only a few minutes.
Okay.
But for those on board it might have felt like an eternity.
I can't even imagine. They have your sense of time and space completely distorted like that.
Right.
And then there's that strange substance they were injected with. Did they elaborate on that at all?
They describe it as thick, viscous, almost like liquid metal.
Okay.
And it apparently radiated this faint glow. They said it felt cold going in, but then it spread this warmth throughout their body, almost like a second heartbeat.
It's almost like they were trying to merge their biology with some kind of alien technology or something.
Right, yeah.
Did they give any indication of where this substance even came from?
They suggest that it was derived from some kind of naturally occurring substance.
Okay.
Maybe even a life form that they were studying.
Okay.
They even mentioned the possibility that it was extraterrestrial in origin.
Okay, now we're back to aliens again. It seems like every answer just leads to more questions.
Yeah, that's the nature of this topic, isn't it? There's so many layers of speculation and intrigue. It's hard to even know where to begin separating truth from fiction.
But that's also what makes it so fascinating, right?
Absolutely.
It's a puzzle we may never fully solve,
Mm-hmm.
but it keeps us asking questions. exploring these new possibilities.
Exactly. And even if we ultimately conclude that most of this is just a product of someone's imagination,
Yeah.
it still makes us think about the nature of time, the limits of science, the potential consequences of tampering with these forces beyond our understanding.
It's a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the universe,
Yeah.
and that the line between science and fiction can sometimes be incredibly blurry.
Speaking of blurred lines, one of the more disturbing aspects of this account is the potential for human experimentation.
You mean beyond the injections and the mysterious substance?
Yes, yeah. The interview subject hints that there were other more invasive procedures being performed.
Right.
They mention psychological testing, sensory deprivation, even some kind of genetic manipulation.
That's pretty disturbing. Are they suggesting that the government was essentially using these sailors as guinea pigs for their time travel experiments?
That's the implication,
Yeah.
yes. And it raises all sorts of ethical questions about consent, the limits of scientific inquiry, the responsibility of those in power to protect the well-being of individuals.
If any of this is true, it it paints a pretty dark picture of what might have happened behind the scenes.
It does. And it's important to remember that even if we approach this with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Right.
the possibility of human experimentation is something that should be taken seriously.
It makes you wonder what other secrets might be buried in the annals of history, just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah.
But let's not get too bogged down on the dark side.
Okay.
What about the potential benefits of time manipulation? Did the interview subject mention anything about that?
They did, actually. They suggested that one of the motivations behind this whole Philadelphia experiment was to gain some kind of strategic advantage in warfare.
Oh, okay.
Imagine, being able to send troops or supplies back in time to alter the course of a battle or even prevent a war from happening altogether.
That's some serious sci-fi stuff right there.
Yeah,
But it also raises a whole host of moral dilemmas.
absolutely.
Like who gets to decide what events should be changed?
Exactly.
And what are the potential consequences of meddling with the past?
Right. Those are questions that have been explored in countless science fiction stories, and
Mhm.
for good reason. The ability to manipulate time would give us this unprecedented level of power.
Yeah.
But it would also come with this immense responsibility.
It's a responsibility that I'm not sure we as a species are ready to handle.
Right.
But for the sake of argument, let's say that time travel is possible
Okay.
and that someone has figured out how to do it safely and ethically.
Right.
What kind of impact could that have on our world?
That's a fascinating question. The implications are they're truly mind-boggling. We could potentially correct past mistakes, prevent disasters, or even accelerate scientific progress.
But it's also easy to imagine how such power could be abused.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to think about the possibilities.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that the human imagination has no limits.
And that's what makes exploring these mysteries so much fun.
Yeah.
We get to delve into the realm of the unknown, challenge our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
expand our understanding of what might be possible.
Exactly. And even if we never find definitive answers,
Yeah.
the journey itself is worth taking.
Well said.
Yeah.
But before we get too philosophical, let's try to wrap up this deep dive with some key takeaways.
Okay.
What are the most important things we've learned from exploring this interview about the Philadelphia experiment?
I think one of the key takeaways is that even the most outlandish claims can spark our curiosity and lead us to ask these interesting questions about science, history, and the nature of reality itself.
That's a great point. And even if we approach this story with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Right.
it still makes us think about the limits of our knowledge
Yeah.
and the possibilities that might exist beyond our current understanding.
It also highlights the importance of critical thinking, I think,
Hmm.
and the need to be discerning consumers of information. In a world where misinformation spreads like wildfire, it's crucial to evaluate sources, consider multiple perspectives, and be willing to question even the most compelling narratives.
And I think it's safe to say that this particular narrative has certainly given us plenty to think about.
It has indeed. But before we wrap up completely, there's one more aspect of this interview that I think is worth exploring.
Okay.
The subject repeatedly mentions the sense of dread, this
Mhm.
this feeling that something terrible is going to happen.
You mean like a premonition of some kind?
It's It's hard to say for sure,
Uh,
but they describe it as this looming darkness,
Hmm.
a feeling that the world is on the brink of this cataclysmic event.
Pretty ominous. Do they give any clues as to what this event might be?
They're vague on the details, but they suggest it has something to do with the manipulation of time itself.
Okay.
Like by tampering with the timeline, we've somehow upset this delicate balance, and now we're facing the consequences.
Okay, now we're back in full-blown conspiracy theory territory.
Right.
But even if we take this premonition with a grain of salt,
Sure.
it raises an interesting question.
Yeah.
If we could manipulate time, would we be wise enough to do it responsibly?
Right.
Or would we end up creating more problems than we solve?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we as a species may have to grapple with sooner than we think.
Well, that's a thought-provoking note to end on.
Yeah.
But before we leave our listeners with existential dread,
Right.
let's try to offer a bit of hope.
Agreed. Even in the face of uncertainty and potential danger, the human spirit is resilient.
Yeah.
We have an innate drive to explore, to understand, and to overcome challenges.
And who knows, maybe by delving into these mysteries, asking these tough questions,
Yeah.
we can actually help shape a better future.
That's a great point. After all, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about the universe and our place within it, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges that lie ahead.
Well said. But for now, we're going to leave our listeners to ponder the mysteries of the Philadelphia experiment
Yeah.
and draw their own conclusions.
As always, we encourage you to continue exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop seeking knowledge.
The truth, whatever it may be, is out there waiting to be discovered. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
We started this deep dive talking about, a ship teleporting around.
Right.
But we ended up having this, mind-bending conversation
Yeah.
about time travel,
Yeah.
ancient mysteries,
Ancient texts.
and potential global conspiracies.
Right.
It's amazing how one source can just lead you down all these different paths.
Yeah. It really speaks to the power of storytelling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even if we take this interview with a big grain of salt,
Right.
it still sparks our imagination and makes us think about the world in these new ways.
It's like a good science fiction novel, you know?
Ah.
You know it's not real,
Right.
but it still gets you thinking about the what-ifs.
Yeah, the what if.
What if we can manipulate time?
Right.
What if there are these ancient secrets out there just waiting to be discovered?
Yeah.
What if we're not alone in the universe?
Those what ifs are really what drive, scientific exploration and discovery.
Right.
We need those imaginative leaps to kind of push the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Absolutely. But it's also important to remember that with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
If we ever do, unlock the secrets of time travel or other advanced technologies,
Right.
we need to make sure that we use them wisely.
Couldn't agree more. It's not that old saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We need to carefully consider those ethical implications of our actions, especially when we're dealing with technologies that could have such profound consequences.
So where does that leave us in terms of the Philadelphia experiment?
Yeah.
We've dissected this interview. We've explored the claims, debated the possibilities.
Right.
What's the final verdict?
Honestly, I don't think there is a definitive verdict.
Okay.
The Philadelphia experiment, like so many other mysteries, is likely to remain shrouded in speculation and debate.
Yeah.
But I think that's okay.
Right.
The beauty of these unsolved puzzles is that they keep us searching.
Yeah.
They keep us questioning. They keep us pushing the limits of our understanding.
So what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the key takeaway here is critical thinking.
Okay.
Don't just accept everything you hear or read at face value. Dig deeper, ask questions, and form your own conclusions based on, the evidence.
And remember, sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely.
Exploring these mysteries, even if we never find definitive answers,
Right.
can be a really rewarding experience in and of itself.
It's all about expanding our horizons, challenging our assumptions, and embracing the wonders of the unknown.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to sign off and leave you to ponder the mysteries of the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you enjoyed the journey.